Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with a Vet. I'm Carol Lee. I have a wonderful guest waiting in the wings. Before we get to him, though, a couple things I wanted to talk about. First, if you haven't already gone out and looked at Grow Coffee, this is a great coffee. This one in particular is a medium roast, and they are out of North Carolina, veteran owned. Go take a look. You can type it up in your browser, Grow Coffee, GRO Coffee. Absolutely love them. Wonderful people. Next, we have a couple of books. So, first one is You Just Survive. This is a Combat Chaos and the Quiet Battles That Follow You Home by Jeffrey A. Sabins. Still working on getting him on the channel to have a conversation, but you can check this one out. We have this is a follow-up. So he has written a couple of books. This is James Blackwell, and he has written Gunners. It's B-29 Machine Gunners in the Korean War. He is more of a Korean War historian and absolutely a great read. So you can go check him out as well. And then another one. This is Frank DeMitt's second book, and this is a fictional book. This is Defending the Eagle. Great reads. He's done 2 now. He's hoping to have a series of 7. So get on the bandwagon and go check out his book as well. Then when we hit our next milestone, for all of you individuals who like guns, Aegis Gun Cleaning, they have donated to us a little backpack with their gun cleaning kit. So they have their own recipe, if you will, for their gun cleaning. That is in here. So hopefully we will have a lucky winner for that when we get to that point. And of course, we can't get there without your help in having people subscribe to us. And of course, make sure you hit that like button and the notification button. Again, one of the things that you guys probably don't know about myself and my husband as well is that when we are out and about doing our daily stuff, if we happen to notice a veteran or in speaking with a veteran, we hand out a thank you for your service challenge coin. And we happen to be at a Lowe's of all places, and we found a group of veterans. And between the two of us, we're like, how many challenge coins do you have? We had just enough to hand out to every one of them. And from that, we have our guest tonight. And so please help me welcome Tom Davis. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Carol Lee. How are you?
I'm doing great. I snuck up on you.
Yeah. No, I was trying to get onto my phone and have the stream up so I can hit the like button. So I'm good. I got that done.
Excellent. Always wonderful.
Help the algorithm.
Again, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you the other day. It was great to meet you and everybody else. And obvious when I talked with you guys, you were all from the VFW that's local to us. So you get to experience the same chill that we are experiencing here. So yeah. I don't feel the lonesome. So that's good. I like starting my shows off by asking a little bit about you and who were you, Tom, as a child?
Well,
we're going deep.
Yeah, I guess. Originally I'm from Arizona, is where I was born. I spent 2 years in Michigan. Outside of that, I was in Arizona, and that was 5th and 6th grade. So, graduated in '89 from a very small school. My graduating class had all of 28 of us. Yeah. Through high school is, I guess average I get for there. I played sports, football, basketball, and I played baseball 1 year and then track 1 year. And
Okay. Out of those, which did you like the best?
football.
Football.
Yeah,
What
football
position
was
did you play?
I moved around a little bit. My senior year, I was the center, which that was the first year I had played that position. I was a defensive or offensive lineman before that, and then on defense, I played defensive end. So being that small of a school, you pretty much played both sides of it. So offense
Yeah.
and defense we played, and it was actually 8-man football that we played.
Okay. All right. Nothing wrong with that, right? You
Yeah.
got to do what you got to do.
Yep. So no,
So,
it was fun. I enjoyed it. Um, yeah, I think out of those 28, I was number 5 graduating. My freshman and sophomore years were a little bit of a struggle, and then I
ah,
think it was actually at one point I had thought about or wanted to go to West Point. And by the time I hit that, like, hey, I need to think about stuff to do about, into my sophomore year sometime. And at that point, or I guess in my junior year, kind of realized, I'm not going to make that grades mainly. And so I wound up enlisting, and I joined at the very beginning of my senior year, went into the delayed entry program. And so, all through the rest of my senior year, I knew I was leaving for the Army.
so okay. Let's go back just a little bit there then.
Sure.
So studious, you wouldn't call yourself a studious individual? Somebody who
Um,
liked school?
I did. It was just like I said, that junior or freshman sophomore year, struggled a little bit. Just whatever it was, and then like I said, I decided, like I said, to try and go to West Point, and so started working on the grades, and then kind of come to the realization, like, because it required a 3.5 as part of the application process. And I didn't look into it enough. I could have still applied and maybe got a waiver or something, but I didn't, and I wound up graduating with a 3.21.
Nothing to smirk about.
Yeah. So So I like I said, as I wrapped it up, I did fine. It was just like I said, I couldn't bring it up enough, having gone through what I did. I failed. It was actually I failed the second semester, or did I get a no credit? Anyway, the second semester of algebra 3-4, and going in. This was in my sophomore year. And so going into my sophomore year, so back up to my freshman year, I struggled with algebra 1-2. And so going into my sophomore year, I wanted to take geometry because I thought that was better. I enjoyed it a little more. The counselor wasn't having anything to do with it, put me into 3-4. I struggled. And then as it turns out, that second semester, I wound up changing schools just for that semester. The math was different. They dropped it, so I didn't get credit for that. And I came back my junior year, and I got into geometry that year. A's or B's, one of the two. And then that second semester, I made up that algebra 3-4 class and passed that one.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, so I came from big town, right? So, but in middle school, we had to take kind of a pre-exam to get into our high school courses that we wanted, like prerequisites. So I signed up my freshman year for Algebra 1-2. However, they only gave me Algebra 1, which meant my sophomore year, I had to take Algebra 2. And we only had to take 2 years. So I didn't even get the 3 and 4. So you're doing good.
Yeah. So, and then turn around my senior year, it cracks me up at this point. Living it, I was not super excited about it. But so I think it was my sophomore year, the school changed how it was structured. We went from 6 class periods a day to 7. And so my class, I think we were the last ones to actually, like, we were taking more credits, but we didn't need all of those to graduate. However, it mathed out. So I get to my senior year, and I did not need to take a 7th period, and I was pretty excited about that. And this is a different counselor. He was the football coach also. but he was having nothing to do with that, and so I wound up taking trigonometry my senior year, which
Okay.
that one, yeah, and I did fine. I actually, so again, a small school trigonometry class. I think there was probably 7 of us in that class, and it's all, I was not wanting to be there, but all the other, the other kids, I couldn't tell if they wanted to be there or not, but these are our smart kids, right? And so, 2 or 3 times a week, I'm asking my teacher, I'm like, hey, can I go talk to the counselor? And, and this is pretty, be fairly early on in the class. And she'll ask if I have my work done. I'm like, yeah. And everybody else is looking at me like, wait, what? How did you? I'm like, it was actually fairly, it was fairly easy for me, I guess. And so I go down and talk to the coach. I'm like, hey, coach, you got to get me out of this class. I can't, again, it's my senior year. I'm trying to skate, man. And so he's, hey, what are you making this week? And, like, well, this week, I'm like, this week I'm making an A, and, I'm making an A. Get out of here, you chiseler. That's what he was. Yeah. So that was my senior year. And like I said, I think I, A or a B in that class that I wound up with.
Nice.
So I decided too late to lean into it and figure it out.
So what was it then that made you decide that you spoke that you wanted to go into West Point. What was it that made you decide first that you wanted to do that? And secondly, what was it that made you decide to join the Army specifically?
Yeah. So, and yeah, kind of as I tell the story, it's kind of interesting, I guess, because as I talk about West Point, it's a college. And I think it was just the Army in general. And they kind of, but I knew I didn't really want to go to college. I just wanted to be in the Army. And my grandfather was a World War II veteran. And so that kind of, leaned into it. And then, yeah, I didn't have a drive or a want to go to college. I was like, what am I going to do? And then, and then the other side of that too is paying for it, which, it was on me to do that. And I'm like, I'm not going to, it just didn't make sense for me to go to college. I didn't want to do it. I'm not going to go up there not knowing what I'm doing. I knew it then again, like I said, even though West Point is a college, but like I said, that dropped off kind of early in it. And so I was like, all right, well, let's enlist. And so, like I said, my grandfather having been a World War II veteran, and then talked to the recruiter, and I was like, all right, dude, let's go. In fact, I think I was, having been a recruiter later down the road, that guy had to have been super excited to see me walk through the door, because I had been classified an Alpha Senior, so I scored 50 or better on the ASVAB, and that's I don't get into how it scores.
No, that was great. Actually, that's really good information to hear for me, because I can tell you, what my son scored when he went in. And I remember how it was for me going through school, and we had to take the ASVAB at school. Everybody sitting down in the lunchroom, going through the ASVAB. And I remember distinctly, the mechanical and science, I scored really high in. I hated running. I hated exercising. And before I know it, I am getting so many phone calls from like all the branches. Yeah. And so was that true for you, getting the phone calls, even though I
don't even remember. And so I'm sure my mom got them. I mean, it's actually federal law that recruiters have to contact the seniors, or at least make the attempts. But right. Like I said, and I think it was actually my junior year, maybe. I had to wait until I turned 17 to actually go down to MEPS, and I had to have my mom signed off, allowing me to do it at 17. So, like I said, I went in. I was 16 when I went and talked to the recruiter. So he's like, "All right, I already got one out here in this school for that year." So anyway, and 2 days after my 17th birthday, I was on the floor at MEPS, signed a contract. So
you said that you started the delayed entry program for the Army. I can compare it to what I know, which is the Marine Corps delayed entry program of this generation. Well, my child's generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me what that was like for you. Now, obviously, you were in sports, so you were kind of prepared for the running, etc. But tell me what it was like for you.
Um, I, I don't even really remember seeing my recruiter during the delayed entry program, which probably had to drive him wild. And again, he may have been contacting me. I might have been, because you're supposed to, check in with a recruiter. That recruiter's supposed to be checking in on you, making sure this kid's going to ship, because that's when that recruiter gets credit for you. Is once you ship for the Army.
Right.
You talk about the Marine, them guys. Whoo, they're responsible for that recruit the entire all the way until they graduate the Marine Corps boot camp, which when I was a recruiter, my running partner out there was the Marine recruiter. And so, he was over there, jamming out letters to these kids, hang tough, man.
Yep. Yep.
For the Army, once you ship, we're good. So, good luck, brother. It's, you made
You're on your own.
Yeah. So I don't remember him, contacting me and I just kind of did my thing. I knew I needed to stay out of trouble. That was a thing. And then I actually, after I graduated, I went to Texas and spent some 4 or 5 weeks out there, I guess, with my grandmother, and then made my way back to Arizona. And then I think it was the day before I was supposed to ship is when I'm like, all right, I guess I need to know how I'm getting to where I need to be. So that's when I'm like calling, hey, dude, he's like, all right, meet me here at this place. And so I had, my mom met me there, and I actually left. I think it was on or like the day before her birthday that I left. So
what did your mom think about the fact that you wanted to do this?
She was not super excited about it, but at the end of the day, I was like, this is what I'm doing. And so she signed for me to go. And then and I don't know if I've ever apologized to my mom for this, but so so in my contract, I was an 88 Mike, which is a motor transport operator. And additionally, I got airborne school. So I go to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic advanced training. And then I go to Fort Benning for jump school. And so mom told me, she's like, hey, I don't want to hear about it until after you jump. And so for like the longest time, I'd be like calling her like, hey, we're getting ready to go jump.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know. It was horrible. And so then it lost its fun, I guess. And so I quit doing that to her.
Let's go back and talk a little bit about your basic training.
Hmm.
Obviously, you'd gone through the delayed entry program, so you had an idea of what to expect. And that's really why they do what they do with the delayed entry program. They want to make sure you're going to be successful getting through. Tell me what was going through your head when you first get there to Fort Leonard Wood. What was happening for you when you first get there?
So when I showed up, you don't go directly into basic training. You go to the replacement. The replacement detachment, and they process you. They line you up. They cut your hair. You get juiced with whatever ridiculous stuff they're jamming into us. And fill out the paperwork. I'll do all the things. The dental, medical. They check you out again, and then there's also physical tests that you have to pass before you go to basic training. And then to your question, I really don't know. I was just like, all right, this is what part of the thing. This was the biggest group, I guess, of people I'd really been around. Like I said, my school, I think in 9 through 12, there's 150 of us. So, not a lot of interaction. So, it's just like, all right, this is the thing we do. And, oh my gosh. And you might've seen some of these pictures, but, and they're out there of basic training places and these replacement detachments. Is an old World War II style barracks. And in these barracks, it's just like an open line of toilets, commodes. And there's no stalls. I'm just like, what in the world is this mess? So that was interesting to go through. And then, and that's, so going into basic training, I talk about the physical, you have, all I really remember, I think we actually had to take a PT. No, we didn't. All we had to do 13 push-ups to go from the replacement detachment to basic training. And it was all I could do to knock out 13 push-ups to make it into basic training.
Really?
And part of that was, and so back up. So before I shipped, I had been out, I started running, on my own and stuff, doing things. And here goes back to, my recruiter. I wasn't really talking with this guy. Of course, I'd shipped, so he didn't care. But, I wasn't doing push-ups or anything like that. So if you're not doing that, a type of physical exercise, it's going to be difficult. And so, yeah, it was all I could do to get 13 push-ups. But I made it, got into basic training the first go round, and then, no issues, going through basic training, physically. I actually was, so years later, I was a drill sergeant, and I think I
see your hat in the back.
Yeah. So I think I gave a lot better training than I received. So,
which is a plus. So let's talk about basic training for you a little bit more. Obviously, there's different trainings they do throughout the time that you're there. Yeah. Was there a certain training that you really enjoyed and excelled at, and ones that you maybe really didn't like?
No, I mean, it was all just part of the thing. Oh, so I did have a funny story.
I'm all for funny stories.
For basic rifle marksmanship, part of this is taking down or disassembly, assembly of the whatever M16, whatever version we were on then, A1, A2, whatever. It might have just been regular M16s. Anyway, disassembly, assembly, go through cleaning, blah blah blah. Anyway, this has to do with disassembly and assembly. So we go through we go through the class and as part of the procedures, you get them put back together, through the manual of arms, inspection arms, ready port arms, and you get them ready to turn into the armor. Well, as it turns out, this particular occasion, I had assembled my rifle incorrectly. It was the bolt carrier group. So the bolt goes into the bolt carrier group, and there is a firing pin retaining pin that slides through, holds the firing pin in, and everything's good, right? Well, my firing pin retaining pin was not in correctly. It was inserted all the way through, but it was not where it would hold that firing pin. So I go through the thing, and when I pull the trigger, it was like clunk. It was bad. So, I wound up just turning my rifle in like that. And then the next day because I'm like, you mess up, you're going to get yelled at. And so I was like, oh man, I wrote it out and turned it in. And the next day figured out how to get this thing apart with, because it does it. Yeah. I didn't break anything or anything. I figured it out and got it taken care of. And so I know how to identify that malfunction. Which served me again as a drill sergeant because,
then you're in there teaching it. Yeah.
I'm reasonably sure I'm not the only private that ever did that. And,
Oh, yeah, most likely not. Yeah. But that is a pretty funny story.
Yeah. So
you had to do the gas chamber. Is that right?
Yep. CS chamber.
What did you think of that?
For basic, it was all right, I guess. I did the thing. You come in with the mask on. They have you hold your breath, close your eyes, break the seal, redo the seal, breathe again, and then they have you break the seal, and you have to breathe, and then you got to clear it again and breathe, and then you wind up taking it off and choking that stuff down. So you come out, and it affects everybody a little differently. But yeah, come out, you get the snot dripping down, your eyes are watering, keep your eyes open. And, that one, and that was, just did the thing. I tell you later down the road, it was, a much worse experience was the, pepper spray in the police academy. So
we'll get to that.
Yeah, that was, so yeah, the CS chamber was fine. As a drill sergeant, it was absolutely hilarious. to see them privates come out, because it gives you, and we do this for a reason. So everyone's like, oh, they got them flapping their wings like flapping their arms like a duck and doing all these weird things. There's a reason we do it, other than it just being absolutely hilarious. The air is what will clear it out, and that's why you got to force your eyes open. You got to clear it out and breathe. So that's why we're doing it, and safety hazard or safety also. We don't want these privates running around, tripping over everything and being weird. So there is a reason for it, but it is absolutely hilarious to see him come up choking and snot dripping down, and just you're like, all right, get out.
Takes you back, right?
Yeah. So it was good times. So.
Well, let's talk about when you finish, you graduate basic. Your mom come? Did she come for the graduation?
Yes, she did. My mom, my sister, and I think my girlfriend at the time was there. So
very nice. Where do you go after basic training?
Basic training was AIT, and it was there at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
So you didn't go very far.
Nope, went down the street to 58 trans, I think it was for AIT, and that was, I think AIT was another 8 weeks. Basic training for me was 8 weeks, and then I think my AIT was 8 weeks. As a drill sergeant, I think we were at 9. I think they had bumped it up a week.
Okay. And AIT, you're learning what?
How to drive a truck. Pretty much anything. Well, they have kind of a set curriculum. I think we were one of the last classes that actually trained on the quarter-ton Jeep. After that, they moved to Humvees. So we learned the quarter-ton Jeep. I think we drove on the Deuce and a Halves. And we drove, I can't tell you what kind, but we drove tractor trailer. I almost didn't make it out of AIT because of that. I struggled backing the trailer. So I wound up barely making it. But, I learned it down the road, so it was all good.
Yeah, right. If your work, it's not a weakness if you learn from it and you improve yourself and get her done later in life. So that's great. Okay. After AIT, what happens for you next?
AIT, we go to jump school. And there was 5 of us, I believe, out of my class. And that was, so, and this drill sergeant we had, this guy was cool. And he very, very low key, low tone. And he calls us in there. And he's like, all right. And his thing was like, listen up, privates. He's like, y'all have heard that stuff about drill sergeants, how they, what they can't do to you and all this. He's like, so we're like, oh, yes, drill sergeant. And he's like, you threw that stuff out the window. He didn't say stuff, but I'll clean it up for a family show.
It's for veterans, so
So he's like, yeah, just throw that out the window, which was kind of true for safety. They'll stomp on you in the aircraft for a safety violation, which the guy didn't get stomped on, but. So anyway, he tells us that. So it's like, oh my gosh, man, what did I get myself into here with this mess? So anyway, we head on down to Fort Benning, Georgia, and get in processed, yada yada, start doing the things, go through all the training, and it was different in that, like I said, for those actually probably would have been 9 or so weeks given replacement and all that you're on lockdown under total control. So check in there at jump school, and I mean after training hours, you're done. You're a normal person. So walking around, I'm like, oh, what are we? I'm like, someone's gonna hem me up somewhere. But so we get to my very first jump there. At that time, we did I think it was 10 jumpers per pass, and so I think I was number 10, and so we start going down the. Like go through all the things, stand up, hook up, shuffle to the door, all the things, and start heading out. And I think it was number 8. And typically the jump masters will kind of assist you, especially on that first one for whatever reason, or, but this guy, got his hands in the door and just locked there, turns around. He's like, fuck you, Sergeant Airborne, I ain't going. And he didn't. And they wound up yoinking him out, sitting him down. But and so for that first jump going up, that it's what were we in? I think it's C-141 maybe. But anyway, going up and we rigged up, gone through all the JMPI, Jumpmaster, the pre-inspection. and then get on the plane. And yeah, like as we're going, I'm like, what in the, I was like, man, this is not okay. And so I was struggling with it. And then they opened the doors, and kind of the air comes in. You kind of look at it, it's like, all right, this is good. And then that dude freezes in the door. I was like, oh man. But so then I wound up being number 2. Got out the door. We made 2 jumps that day, or 2 or 3, and then 2 or 3 the next day. However, we had to have 5. And but so that was by the time we got back to the barracks that night, that guy that had froze, he was gone. He was out of the barracks. That dude was nowhere to be found.
Wow.
And it's not like all they did, it's like, all right, whatever, dude, you didn't make it. They just sent him to the unit.
Yeah.
So
you finish your first jump. What was going through your head after that? I mean, obviously the adrenaline rush, but outside of that, were you shocked that you were able to do that, and how you felt afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, after that, it was kind of like, all right, it's a done thing. Most typically, what you hear is the second jump is the worst because you know what to expect, which is kind of I don't know some of the things for me that for most jumps, I guess after that, or just different times, is one of the probably for me the worst fear was being a towed jumper. That's where your static line, because it's static line jump. So you hook up inside the aircraft, and your parachute deploys or starts the deployment process once you leave. So towed is when you're for whatever reason you get hung up. Your chute doesn't deploy. So you're just banging off the side of the aircraft. So just that additional opening shock would be very, very difficult, or very painful, I would imagine. I was never towed, so I didn't have to live that dream. But that was kind of one of the things. And then at different points in my career, I was like, the landings, because I experienced some bad landings throughout my career. I never wound up in the trees, so I'm pretty excited about that.
That's a plus.
Yeah. So I wound up, I think I bruised my tailbone like 3 different times. And then I landed on a canteen on my hip at one point. And that was, that was an issue. So some of the landings, like, oh man, but yeah, I mean, you just, you shoot up and you do the thing, and it works out how it works out.
I had gotten years ago for my husband to clarify, first I increased his life insurance policy, and then I got him a tandem jump at Sturgis, and watching him coming in, I mean, like they were dropping them. So you had the highway here, and they're dropping them just like up here. And by the time they get to they just start crossing over the road, and there's the barbed wire fencing. Like they're lifting their legs and clenching their butt cheeks just to make sure they don't hit that coming down. I was like, oh my gosh. It's fun to watch, but
yeah, definitely some interesting times being on jump status.
Yeah. So from there, once you get through the jump school, what happens next for you?
So from jump school, I think I took leave at that point. So I go home, and then I report to my first duty station, which was Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I reported to it was HHC, was headquarters company for the 82nd Airborne. So I was in the motor pool, and I was assigned to the tool room clerk. I was there in fact, I signed when I signed in or got to my unit. And I think it was like 3 days later that they shooted up and went to Panama. So jumped into Panama for jump cause. So I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And so the motor sergeant, he was like, don't worry about it. It's like, we're not going anywhere unless the entire division goes. All right. So, and then, a few months later, we were heading over for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. But so anyway, I spent about 4 months there, and then I went with myself and this other guy I had gone through basic AIT and jump school with. We both got assigned there, and then we were not authorized, so they sent us down to a unit that we were authorized in, as 407th S&T, into the S&T, so supply and transport, the truck drivers. So got there, went to we were actually in Fort Chaffee in Arkansas that was the Joint Readiness Training Center was there at that time. And we were in the field. We had just packed up. We were changing there's a brigade supply area, the BSA. He had packed up. We're jumping sites, and they shut us down. We're convoying out, and they're like, "Hey, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and we're going to war." Ah. And it's like so. Then the question was like, "Who is Saddam Hussein? Where is Kuwait?" Like, okay, let's go. And so we shut down that night. And then it was pretty entertaining with everybody. We're all we have all the blank ammunition, and most everybody. I didn't, because it creates a lot of extra cleaning when you shoot blank rounds. So I was like, I don't think I want to play this game. But everyone's like shooting their guns, and some lieutenants like running up and down the line. Stop that! We got to turn all that in, and then some guys up on the 50 cal rocking it out. And it's just, it was, we slept in the trucks that night. And then the next day, like, all right, let's go. So we went back onto Fort Chaffee, did the railhead. And then, within 24 hours of that, we touched down back at Fort Bragg. And then, I think it was from that time, 10 days later, we touched down in Saudi Arabia.
So let's talk about that.
Sure.
When you get off the plane in Saudi Arabia, what's happening in your head?
Well, the lead up to what was going through my head, I rode on a C-141. It was my truck, loaded up with whatever I had loaded up on it in a trailer. So get loaded up onto that, and it's like me and there were some other dudes on this flight, but we fly from Pope Air Force Base at Fort, in North Carolina. There, it's on Fort Bragg, to Germany. Well, this whole flight, I am freezing, just absolutely freezing. And so we land in Germany. They let us off the plane for a little bit. It's like, all right, it was August in Germany, so it was okay. It wasn't like super hot, or it was okay. It's like, all right, I warmed up a little bit, and I'm like, all right, awesome. These guys will change crew. Maybe they'll kick the heat on. Yeah, no. Froze again from there in Germany to into Saudi Arabia, whatever. I think it was whatever airport we landed at. And so as we start the descent, the plane starts heating up, and it was like 5:00 at night that we land. So it starts warming up. I'm like, oh yes, thank you. It's warm now. And so we get on the tarmac, and it's starting to get a little hot. And then they open the troop doors, and the hot air rushes in, and I'm like, what this is, it's like 120 degrees at 5:00 at night. They drop the tailgate, and I was like, I am going to die in this country. This is going to be horrible. So that's what was going through my mind as I got off the plane. It's like, this is going to be a suck fest. But we got off the plane, and then we, there's, our advanced parties or whatever flagging us down. Hey, you're this unit, go here. And the first is like a 2-liter bottle of water, and it was just ridiculously hot. I mean, you couldn't even drink it.
Wow.
And so and then they put somebody else in the truck with me from my unit, and then we convoyed up to Champion, Maine was the name of the place where we were at initially. So that's what was going through my mind. It's like, I'm gonna die in this country.
So while you're there, do you have an opportunity then to mingle with any of the civilians from that area, or even eat any of the cuisine there that they have? Or are you strictly base and being fed from the base?
Pretty much from the dining facility. We had once we kind of started moving around and getting ready to, once the invasion was going to kick off, the brigade that we were supporting was tasked to defend the airfield. And so we moved down there, and we actually were, I think it was the airport that actually sent the meals to us. And probably one of the best meals I had that I can remember. It was like a lamb stew.
Wow.
So they sent in like, all right, here's your stuff. So, but as far as like out with the civilians no, we didn't do that. We had one, myself and a few of the other guys, we got tasked to drive some guys for like a little R&R thing. and we went to, I think it was one of the Prince's palaces. And
Wow.
so, yeah. And so we're the only guys with our firearms, we got our rifles with us, but we can't go running around this place with our rifles. So, we're like, well, there's no way we're going to just sit in our trucks while these guys are at the beach. And, whatever I don't even, I remember going into the beach or going into the ocean. But other than that, I'm like, I don't know, it was a blur. But what we did is on our deuce and a halves, there's this, it's an OVM box. So it's got, your some of your tools and your, whatever. It's a pretty big box. So we broke our rifles down and put them inside of those boxes and locked them up, and then went and did things like, hey, whatever. So we got away with it. So it was like,
Well, okay. Tell me a little bit about what the terrain was like. Obviously it's very hot. I'm assuming arid. But what was the terrain like? What did it look like to you?
Saudi, yeah, because I'm trying to think where. So there in Saudi, it was a lot of typically what you would see, the shifting sand dunes and all that business. Once you get into Iraq, it's a little more hard packed. It looks a lot like we're out here for that. Probably southern Arizona, parts of Texas. It's similar. Okay. So that was, yeah, it was. I mean, it's flat. I know there are some regions where there's some mountains out there, but for that, yeah, it's pretty flat. So
interesting. Okay. How long are you there for?
9 months is what we did for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Yeah, them jokers. They, and I was, like I said, this was 10 days after leaving JRTC. So it was August 20th, I think. The first guys in the 82nd were some of the first ones there. It was like August 10th that they touched down. So fairly early on. And then we get there and we wind up just hanging out. We see all these other guys that came in after us leave before us. It's like, you got to be kidding, man. So it was, yeah, it was something like, just send us home, man, whatever.
Please let me go home.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. But, what do you do? Go through the line to wash your truck and
and just keep doing what you're doing.
Do the thing, yeah.
So you come back stateside, I'm assuming, or did you go deploy somewhere else from there?
No, from there we came back to Fort Bragg.
Okay.
And then just got kind of back into a regular thing. I think from there, I wound up. So and I don't know if we covered this all, but I served almost 25 years. So there's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, let's go.
But yeah, we came back. I wound up came back. I got. As I came back initially, my first enlistment was a bit of a struggle initially, and a lot of it was leadership I had during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, not very good, and so I came back with a very poor attitude, and finally got myself fixed. I had some changes in leadership and went to the promotion board, got promoted to sergeant, and then got sent to Korea. So went to Korea for a year. I was actually left there. I was promotable. I went to the promotion board again, right before I left. And this was, just pretty much as when I came in the window to be eligible. And then, I went to Korea for a year and then came back to Fort Bragg. Coming back to Fort Bragg, I had re-enlisted when I was in Korea. And I had re-enlisted because of my PAPA identifier, because I was airborne. And I didn't know, I was thinking I had to be on jump status to keep my money. I was like, man, these guys aren't taking my money. And I wanted to be jump status anyway. So they actually assigned me to a unit in COSCOM, which I was expecting to go back to the 82nd Airborne. And the COSCOM is a Corps Support Command. They're a different animal. And so, I went, I talked to Sergeant Major, told him about this. And plus I'm like, I want a squad leader position. So he's like, all right, go over there, talk to those guys. As long as they got that for you, then I'll release you. So I go I talk to the 82nd. They were chock full. They had more E5s than you could shake a dang stick at.
Wow.
So I was like, yeah, that's not, because I was still pretty junior in rank. Just a little over a year in grade, maybe two, but so it's still pretty junior as a sergeant.
Yeah.
So I come back over and I'm talking to the sergeant major, and he's like, okay, look, I got this company. They've got a jump status. They've got a jump slot for you and a squad. I was like, all right, I'll stay. So I stayed there, ran that squad for, when was that? So my next duty assignment was from there. I went to Saginaw, Michigan as a recruiter. So yeah, I got, and that was, and so then what drove the train on that is while I was there, and that was 403rd Trans that I was in at that second time around at Fort Bragg. So a friend of mine had got picked up, and at that point is the basic non-commissioned officer course is a school you have to get promoted to staff sergeant. And so a friend of mine had got Department of the Army Select to go to this school. Well, he was overweight, and so he wasn't going. And so my first sergeant, business was done a little different. So he was able to. He's like, "Hey, Davis, you ready to go?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So he makes the calls, and I go to BNOC. And so while I'm at BNOC, which I think that was 12, 15 weeks, something like that.
Wow.
That I was Fort Eustis in Virginia for the school. And so while I'm there, I wind up being the distinguished honor graduate.
Oh, nice.
So, which then turns into me getting selected for recruiter duty. So I'm like, all right, here we go. So anyway, I get pulled to Saginaw, Michigan, or I go to recruiter school. I managed to pass that. And then I go to Saginaw, Michigan as a recruiter. And that was bad times for me. It's supposed to be a 3-year tour. I think I was out for 15, I think it was 15 or 18 months. So the first 9 months is an evaluation period. And I didn't make it off of that. And so they wound up sending me back to the Army, which was, I was not unhappy about that. So
let's talk about your time as a recruiter, because we talked a little bit about recruiters, right? Yeah. Funny stories. What do you got for me? Or stories, things that stood out to you going, I just can't believe that just happened.
I don't know. It's interesting to see. And like I said, and this was what I said, 97, 98 at this particular time that I was a recruiter, and going into some of these areas that are a little, lower on the economic scale, I guess, and to have them look at you and be like, yeah, no, what I got going on is better. I'm not going to join. I'm just going to. And we laughed at it, but the Delta College. And like I said, I was in Saginaw, which in that area, there's several colleges. And then was it Dow Chemical is up the road in Midland, I think it is. So, but they have these kids yeah, no, we're not
happening.
I like this. And I just, stepped over through like all kinds of weird stuff to get there. And I think I'll stand for this. Thank you. Actually, but on the other side of that too, this one, and this kid actually joined, but I go out, and this was in Frankenmuth, which is a very affluent area, and actually, so kind of long and short of it, this kid had had made an appointment with me, no-showed me a couple different times. There were some other kids out there that I wound up with as Deppers, and I think they wound up shipping anyway. So I wind up, my station commander and I we cold call, knock, 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 let's go. And the mom shows up, and she let us in, but you could tell she was not happy to see us. And so we go in, like, we got to take the shoes off. We got to, we're like waiting for this kid to show up. We're going to surprise him, with an interview with the recruiters. So, and at that point, it was all, we had our little books, like these 3-ring binders that we did our pitch out of, our presentation out of. And so, we're just sitting there hanging out with mom. And the funny part of this too is that the dad was an Army veteran.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, oh, she was, yeah, it was everything but like, I mean, whew, yeah, laser eyes. She was not happy to have us in that house. And so we sit down, we start going, talking to the, the kid. And this appointment, I wound up selling to the mom. And by the end of it, she wanted to join. And it was, and it came down to, it was the college. The money that the Army had for college, but like, look, here's what we, all these things you got, the college level examination programs, CLEP tests, tuition assistance while you're on. Plus there was the Montgomery GI Bill at the time. And she's like, oh, well, right on. We don't have to pay for this kid going to college. And he wasn't going to college. He hadn't taken the SATs. He hadn't done it. He had no desire to go to college. But yeah, so by the end of that, she was like, she's like, hey, where do I sign? Hold on. So, but then I had to, those other kids I was talking about, I was like, hey, scoop this kid up, because his eyes were glazed over when I'm talking about college. He could give a rip less. So anyway, I'm like, hey, get this kid back in the office. We'll talk to him about some other stuff. So we did.
Right.
And he did well enough. He scored, like I said, I don't remember what it was, but it was 50 or better on the ASVAB. And he wound up going infantry. His deal was adventure. I want to go, do adventurous stuff. So put him in as an infantryman, and yep, there you go. So that was one of the funniest ones, I think.
Now, I've known recruiters who they get somebody in and they do their version of the ASVAB, and when they score above a certain score, they obviously want to fill some of those positions that the recruiter or recruit could potentially have. When they say nope, I want to go infantry, what's going through your mind as a recruiter, as opposed to an officer?
I had one that I referred to there was an officer program at that time. I did refer one of them to that, but and they may do it differently now, but when I was a recruiter, I didn't care what job they wanted. I needed them qualified physically, mentally, and morally, and all of that was waiverable. So it was the job of, when they went down to MEPS, that was their job down there, was to meet the needs of the Army. So, if whatever that first page is, that's what they're, of jobs available that this kid qualifies for. That's what they're trying to sell them on. As a recruiter, it's like, oh yeah, that's whatever job they say. Oh yeah, that's the best job in the Army. It didn't matter to me.
Right.
Like, okay, dude, if you want to be a grunt, knock it out. You scored a 98 on the ASVAB, but okay.
Yeah, I could say for the Marine Corps, the recruiters were not happy. Yeah. Not happy when you score high enough to have any job, any MOS, and you say, nope, I'm going infantry. They will call you all sorts of names.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is it's got to meet the need of that branch. And, right. And that's why they're listed like that. Hey, here's where we're short. So that's the push is to do this. But then, you as the applicant be like, okay, well, this is what I want. Pound sand, I'm out.
Yep.
And you'll chances are pretty good, unless you're not qualified. If you're not, you can't go down there with barely with a 31 QT was the minimum for males. You can't go down there, with a 31 QT talking about, I want to be a rocket surgeon. It's like, not happening, bro. You're not.
Right. So. Right. Exactly. So, okay, you get through a year of recruiter assistance. What happens then?
Yeah, it was about 15 months or so, because it's a process. Okay. I hit that 9 months, and they were actually going to keep me, but they were at that point it was just bad. So they're like, I had some other stuff stacked up the way it went. So they're like, all right, we'll let you go. So they send me to Fort Hood in Texas, and I show up there, and at that time it was the primary leadership development course. So this is the first school you have to go to get promoted to become an NCO, to become a sergeant. And so they were asking for applicants. I said, all right, let's, I'll give it a go. And so I applied, they interviewed me, and they hired me to be a leadership instructor at PLDC. Wow. And then I was there and I was still a sergeant, E5, and that was typically a staff sergeant E6 position. But they needed bodies. So there I was.
Right. Yeah.
And plus, I was qualified. Like I said, I was the distinguished honor grad at at my BNOT class. I had NCOERs where I had some other stuff I had volunteered for, leadership stuff. So, it's not like I was just, some random dude. They're like, all right, we got to have somebody. So you're it. So I qualified for it. And I think I was with those guys also about 15 months. So I got kind of to the end of that. And, all right, I hit a point, it was, about 13, 14 months. And for whatever reason, they're like, all right, look, all you E5s, because there was a couple of us, they're like, you guys got to go. We got to have the staff sergeants here filling these positions. So you're heading down the road. So, and it was funny. I think like the very next month I got promoted to staff sergeant.
Wow.
I had, and I spent quite a bit of time as a sergeant, lack of effort on my part. And then I was like that year, as a PLDC instructor. A lot of it was listening to these guys that were the staff sergeants that were teaching us, and they were, not super excited about the stuff they were doing or saying. And so I was like, all right, I got to get promoted. And so me and this other sergeant, her and I we were battle buddies, I think. And so we're like, we're switching off doing these classes. And so it took me about a year. I was like, all right, I am going to get promoted. And so, hammered away at these, some of the college classes and these things I could do. In fact, I went back to the promotion board, which is a little bit of a risky proposition because you can either come out, not recommended for promotion, less points. But I wound up coming out better off. I picked up a few more points on the promotion board.
Nice.
So hammer that out. And then, like I said, so like a month later, I get promoted to staff sergeant. I go to, and actually I wound up in this unit again later down the road, but it was 704th. Yeah, 704th. I show up there. Hey, here I am. I did an NTC rotation as an augmentee observer controller. So we went out there, grading the guys or helping them, prepare for. There were no deployments at that time, but it's still part of the process.
Right.
So 2 months out there, come back, and they're like, all right. As a staff sergeant, I was authorized the basic allowance for housing. So I was like, I'm out of the barracks, man. Let's go. And I was in the supply room turning my key into my apartment. I had just signed like this year lease or whatever it was. And the company commander is like, comes in, he's like, hey, Sergeant Davis, do you want to go to Bosnia? And I'm like, okay, let's go. So I wound up, I had to break that lease, put all my stuff in storage and off to Bosnia I go. And this was, I went as an augmentee. There was, I think 8 or 9 of us. And it was the National Intelligence Cell had asked for a motor pool team. So myself was like, I was going to be the truck master. We had a maintenance, NCOIC, fuel guy, whatever, just these different MOSs to fill this motor pool type assignment. So, we do the thing, we train up, we go to Fort Benning for a training to go over there. They teach us about mines and all kinds of, good stuff, go through that, get to Germany. And then we're sitting in Germany. So we get to Germany, like hang out there for, go through the process, get to Bosnia, and we show up there and these guys are like, what are you even doing here? Like, we don't need you. And so I was like, oh my gosh, man, just went through all this mess. And so the master sergeant, who was the kind of the NCOIC of it, sets us down. He's like, look, guys, we can, I can either find us jobs or whatever, we can go home. And I was like, I did not just come down here to miss out on, all the tax exemption stuff, the hazard duty pay, because it's a pretty significant amount of money when you're deployed, or can be. So I was like, hey, find me a job. So he did. I worked for, it was the S4 Commandant, which they were for headquarters S4 Commandant. So we were in charge of, when I initially got there were 2 compounds, Litza and Bootmer. Bootmer, they were building, they were kind of finishing it up. It was the NATO headquarters, like for the area. Litza was the beginning of it. And that was actually on that compound was the hotel where Archduke Ferdinand spent his last night, which if you're familiar with that, that's the assassination that started off the shooting portion of World War I. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was part of that compound. Anyway, we closed all that down. But headquarters commandant, we were responsible for the perimeter security. So all the different contingents that would rotate through, we coordinated all of that. The International Military Police, we were responsible for a lot of their stuff, coordinating what they did. And so I wound up there, and I was actually in Bosnia when I came down on orders for my next duty assignment, which was drill sergeant duty. And so this is, I had, as I kind of walked through it, a lot of different things within my career that a lot of dudes don't have happen to them. And this is one of them, is now having, and I'll tell you, as you go back to recruiting, the perception within the Army is that recruiting is a cakewalk. It's an easy job. And it absolutely is not. And
Right.
A lot of it depends on where you are at.
Yeah.
There are areas that are walk-in markets. Some of your big cities, these guys, they don't, they just sit in their office. People they get enough. It's just volume. And so, enough people come through, you can qualify enough people, boom, then the saying is make mission go fishing. So that was not the case at that particular time in Saginaw, Michigan. And having been, the TT&E relief coming off of an unsuccessful tour as a recruiter, to get picked up as a drill sergeant I honestly thought that was going to be the end of my Army career, having been unsuccessful as a recruiter. I didn't think I would ever get promoted past staff sergeant. But anyway, so I'm hanging out in Bosnia, and I get an email like, hey, guess what? You just got picked up for, and I think that the way it came out, I thought it was recruiting again. I was like, there is no way these guys are sucking me out into recruiting again. I was just like, oh man, I was like, no way. So anyway, I kind of go through the process, kind of figure it out. And they're like, yeah, no, dude, this is drill sergeant duty. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I can probably handle that. And then what I wound up doing, so I could complete that tour, is I deferred that assignment. So I think I was supposed to report in January of 2001. And I instead reported in, I think it was March of 2001.
Okay.
And so I finish out that tour in Bosnia, come back to Fort Hood, go through I wind up going to report to drill sergeant school, get through that fine. And then, that was loads of fun. It was like basic training again. Except, we got off on the evenings, we could leave the barracks. And additionally, though, we had to, learn how to teach some of this stuff. So I was like learning, all these modules for the position of attention, and you had to do this stuff like verbatim. So it was pretty, wow. It was a pretty intense school to get through it. So anyway, I got through that fine. And then, so I reported in June of 2001 for drill sergeant duty at Fort Jackson in South Carolina. And then obviously, September 11th of 2001, that was an interesting day that we were actually in the middle of the cycle. I think we were on, I forget what day it is, but we were teaching range procedures. We had gone through the red phase, which is all, drill sergeants yelling at everybody and, teaching them how to march and do the things. So, and we had gone into to white phase, which is BRM, basic rifle marksmanship. And so part of what you have to do is teach them how to, the range procedures, how we're going to act on the range, getting on the range, getting off the range. It's a whole day, like legit, of just, these privates learning how to hold their rifle while they're walking up and down the range, like up and down range, keep the rifle up and down range. And so we were at lunch, and so this is kind of away from the main part of the installation, and we have to run food back and forth. So, the drill sergeant of the day, whoever he comes out with the chow, and he's like telling us the stuff, and he's like, yeah, man, check it out. This, stuff happened, and oh yeah, they flew planes into the World Trade Center. We're like, what? He's like, oh yeah, Michael Jordan's coming out of retirement. So we just thought this dude's clowning, and it was pretty shortly after that they're like, yeah, no, this is legit. So we wound up we shut training down that for the rest of that day, took all the privates back, and we're like, hey, anybody, and at that particular time, phone privileges were extremely controlled. So, but we identified any of the privates that were like, hey, anybody here got family, in New York, in the towers and whatever, we put them on the phones and let them call and check on their families.
Which is good.
Yeah. So, and then we went back to our business of training, and you talk about some irritated dudes. especially as things, developed, and then we went into Afghanistan initially. All of us are like, man, I want to get in the fight, dude. Especially those infantry guys. It's like, man, I'm sitting here, training, and the rest of the Army is out doing what the Army does. So, and then we actually came up on, so drill sergeant duty is supposed to be a 2-year tour. And I got to about 1 year, 6 months, and I got orders. I was trying to go to Fort Carson at the time, and I wind up with orders to Fort Carson. And then like shortly after that, they froze us all in place. So it was hilarious to me, kind of. Now it is more so. But so initially I get orders, you get, 10 copies of these orders or whatever. And so the deletion of orders, they sent me like 20 copies of these stupid things. I'm like, what in the world is this mess? Like, yeah, that's awesome. So anyway, we got the orders, we all got froze in place for an additional year. So 3 years. And this is something you can choose. And so there are people that do 3 years as a basic training drill sergeant. More typical is you do your 2 years and go back to the Army. Some guys will stay and like do a third year in AIT if they're kind of in that installation, or they'll move to it anyway. So that another one that's not typical, which was a third year as a drill sergeant. And then drill sergeant duty was I think probably one of the most rewarding like jobs that I had. To pick these these guys, pick them all up, and it was co-ed. So, but to pick these guys up at the beginning of training, go over to the reception detachment and pick them up, and they're all like, they're all scared. And you're a nice drill sergeant there. You're like, hey, private, what you got? We're checking their stuff, make sure they got all their ID tags, and they got all their bits, all their inventories are done. Like they're, I'm not going to have any administrative nonsense to deal with. That's not my job. I'm supposed to be training them how to be soldiers. So, you're being nice to them, whatever. All right, private, and until you get them on the bus. And then, then the script flips a little bit. And so, but then to see them, then you're running them off the bus, and, the shark attack, as it's called, to see them like tripping over their bags and like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then to go through all that. And then at the end of it, I say a product, but the quality of soldier that I put into the Army, I was pretty proud of, to see the quality of soldier that I was part of in those platoons.
Right.
And then the guys that I was partnered up with, I was very fortunate, very blessed with the battle buddies that I had working that job. In fact, the platoon I was in, I think it was, I counted this up at one point. I think I was part of 15 basic training cycles.
Oh, wow.
Of those 15 cycles, I think we were in the neighborhood of, I think 8 to 10 times that our platoon or platoon I was a part of, we were the number one platoon for basic rifle marksmanship, which that's like the thing for drill sergeants. Like, it's BRM. Like nobody really pushes too much on the other stuff. But within those platoons I was part of, we also had, I myself was drill sergeant of the cycle 2 times. And that was, it kind of changed up a little bit, but basically it's a vote of other drill sergeants. So 2 times I was drill sergeant of the cycle. The platoon I was part of, I think with myself, there were 3 or 4 of us out of that platoon through that time that were 2-time drill sergeant of the cycles, which is there again, not a lot of, they are out there, but a little rarer to see somebody that was a drill sergeant of the cycle 2 times.
Yeah.
So,
that's impressive though.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Pretty good duty. So, and then
so after that, what happens?
So after drill sergeant, so I get to the end of the 3rd year, and I'm talking with my branch to see where I'm going, and I want to go to Fort Carson still. And I'm talking to my branch, and they're like, "Yeah, dude, you can go to Fort Irwin, or you can go to Fort Irwin." And I'm like,
okay, then I guess that's
yeah. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, dude. Because here's what they'll do. So some of these special duty assignments, they will tell you, like when you come off of recruiting or drill sergeant duty or some of these other ones, they'll tell you station of choice. The rest of that sentence is of what's available. And so Coming off of recruiting, I didn't have a choice. They're like, dude, you're going to, guess what, Fort Hood. Have a good time. And then coming off of drill sergeant duty, I'm like, oh, awesome, man. I should get my station of choice. And guys like, yep, nope, you're going to, Fort Irwin, dude, or Fort Irwin. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to Fort Irwin. And it actually turned out to be pretty good. I was an observer controller. I was on the Tarantula team, which is the light task force trainers. So I was on jump status again.
Wow, nice.
At Fort Irwin. And it was nice there. And this was actually the kind of nice, kind of not so much. And this is where I started. I bruised my tailbone here. A couple different, well, actually, I at the installation, twice as jumping with the team, but it was rotary wing. So those were awesome jumps. The opening shock, almost non-existent. A little different, to have having so long, your count is 4,000. You count to 4,000. Your parachute should open, or you pull in your reserve. With rotary wing, you're a little higher. It takes longer, so you got to count to 6. So that's a little weird, kind of the first time you do that. And then, so anyway, I was on jump status with those guys. But this was the whole time I was trying to get out of the ops group is what the duty assignment was. Because I left drill sergeant duty, promotable to sergeant first class. And I'm like, dude, I got some things I need to do. One, I wanted to be a platoon sergeant. And that's part of the deal to his career progression. You got to keep that in mind too. And the sergeant major was like, okay, dude, nope. How about, I'm not letting you go unless you get a replacement. So 2 years, I was doing rotations at the National Training Center is what it's called in Fort Irwin, doing rotations with ops group as a tarantula. And I did the job. I think those guys got a lot out of it, but I'm internally, I'm like, how am I? And part of it, I wound up training first sergeants, and I'm like, how the heck am I telling this guy about stuff when I haven't even been a platoon sergeant yet? But you do the thing, whatever. So 2 years I do that, and then I finally wind up finding a guy that was another 88 Mike, qualified to come to the Tarantula team. So, and it was funny because I wound up, because I'm checking the inbounds, pretty much this whole time, like who's coming in. So, all right. Oh, here's this guy. He's an 88 Mike, for Papa, which is my MOS too. Like you got to have the Papa identifiers.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, here's this guy. So I'm tracking him coming in, and then I wind up in the post office. And I wind up seeing this guy, we're in uniform. And I'm like, hey, man, are you, this guy? And he's looking at me all crazy, like, how the heck do you know?
Because I've been stalking you.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, what's going on? So anyway, I tell him what's going on. And he's like, yeah, man, that's cool. He's like, because he was going to, initially it was supposed to be 211 Cav. He was coming in to be part of their support platoon. And so he's like, yeah, man. He's like, I'm just leaving a platoon sergeant job. He's like, I'm good, dude. So anyway, we were able to work that switch. I went to 111 Cav as their platoon sergeant for support platoon. And and I started doing that in the back. So is one of the highlights, I guess, or kind of a highlight for me on the Tarantula team is I was able to go to Pathfinder school, which is a pretty intense school, but it's not a lot of people go to it other than a lot of the combat arms type folks. But I happen to have had an MOS that we were authorized to go to Pathfinder school. So I talked him into letting me go to Pathfinder school. So I wound up getting that badge.
And for those watching and today and later, explain Pathfinder School.
Pathfinders are the guys that actually go in ahead of airborne operations and set up either a drop zone or a landing zone. They also can do sling loads, so loading, the sling loads from a helicopter, so we can pick up, Humvees or whatever, and carry it via helicopter without actually putting it into the helicopter. So it's attached by rope. So you can do all that stuff, inspect the loads. And the big one though is going in ahead of time and actually setting up drop zones. And this dates back to World War II. these guys actually jumped in without, just kind of basically, middle of the night, and then had to go find these drop zones and set them up, set up the marker lights, and then signal to the planes when to start kicking dudes out. Which,
Wow.
For World War II, that went a little sideways for a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
But that's the job. And like I said, pretty fairly rare badge to get, especially as an 88 Mike. So that was good. But so I go to 111 Cav. I was there for, I think, like 7 or 8 months. And then there's another unit on Fort Irwin. It was 2nd Het, and they were spinning up for a deployment, and it's a transportation company, and they needed people. So almost all of myself and almost all of my 88 Mikes within that support platoon got pulled over to 2nd Het, and we deployed from Fort Irwin to, we're actually based in Kuwait, but it was in support of Iraqi Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom. So get there, kick around Iraq, like I said, we were in Kuwait, going, pulling stuff from the port into Iraq. We were doing some retrograde stuff too. So about 15 months there, and then get back from that and back to Fort Irwin. And I was there, I guess, when did we get back? I think it was like, I want to say August of, oh my gosh.
That's okay.
It was 08. That's what it was. So kind of the end of 08. I was serving as the truck master, and then I get orders to finally Fort Carson. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I finally make it to Fort Carson, and I was assigned to 10th Special Forces Group initially. So I'm back on jump status there. That was a pretty good pretty good assignment. Again, I was not a team guy. I always put that out when I start talking about, my assignment to 10th Special Forces Group. But it was a pretty interesting assignment. I actually wound up TDY a couple times to Germany. I was running it's called the ISB, the International Staging Base. So, and 10th Group actually at that time had a battalion on Fort Stuttgart, or for just Stuttgart in Germany. And so that what they would do is then the team guys from the States would come. They would, I was responsible for putting up, it basically was a barracks. So we would house them. We had a kind of a rental fleet. So get their car, so they could go get ready to go do their team guy stuff, and then just whatever they kind of whatever they needed, provide that support for them. They'd go. I think they were hidden into Africa at that time, but wherever they went, go do their thing, come back. And then, rotate out, like, all right, I'm going to get them to the airport, from the airport to the airport, the guys that were part of that. So, so 2 times I went to that. And then I was coming up, I think I was there about 2 years, and decided it was time to leave. And I had actually, so before I had left for it, or when I came back from that Iraqi Freedom deployment, I was actually at 20 years or coming up on it, and I had dropped retirement paperwork and was approved, and so was kind of coming into that, and wound up I went through a divorce, and obviously this was like 2008 2009, so I'm like, this is probably not a good idea or not a good time to get out of the Army with the the economy the way it's going. Plus, they offered me a bonus, so I was like, all right, I'll stick around. I actually played that one a little bit wrong, because they actually paid out the bonus in 2-year increments, and I jumped on for an extra 5. So I should have just done 6 and got more money, but whatever. So anyway, so I pulled my retirement packet, stayed on for that bonus, and then like I said, went to got the orders from there to Fort Carson. Coming up on the end of that, and there's a little bit of we had a major as a company commander, which is something you don't necessarily see a lot of, but they had sent her to us, and she was a little confused about what I did in the company. So I kind of saw that as I needed to extract myself from that location. +2 coming up on 2 years. I knew I could come up on PCS, permanent change of station orders. And I was like, nah, dude, I'm at the very end of my career. I was like, I'm retiring here at Fort Carson. You guys are not going to move me. You're not going to send me to dang, Korea or something weird. So I was like, and so the way it worked is I went from 10th Special Forces Group on Fort Carson over to the 704th, and I think DSB, which this is the unit I had deployed as an augmentee to Bosnia.
Right.
So, I'm back in this unit. But it was considered a permanent change of station, so that resets the clock for me. So I'm like, all right, this will ride me out. But the unit I picked, I went over there. I was talking to the I think the brigade sergeant or whoever, and they're like, all right, we got a unit deploying, I think in like 2 months, or a unit deploying in it's like 6 or 8 months. And so I had very recently had got married again. And I was like, well, launching out of here that early is probably not going to be a good idea. So I went I chose the later deployment. So
Not a bad thing, though.
Yeah. So we, went through the train up, did the things, and then deployed to Afghanistan for Enduring Freedom. And that one was 9 months. And that was actually another interesting deployment. This one was it turned out a lot better than it kind of was shaping up to be. I actually got moved, and so here's another fun fact for me, is that 2 times I assumed platoon sergeant responsibilities in a theater of operation.
Wow.
So the first one, and is not ideal. Most cases you're at least part of it, and some of these guys, and you do the train up, you go deploy, and then you come home. For Iraqi freedom, I was at Fort Irwin. I was able to go to Fort Carson I went TDY for 5 days to meet my platoon leader and the platoon. And then I went back to Fort Irwin, went through the rest of the training with those guys. And then I assumed those duties once we hit ground in Kuwait. I think we were at Arif Jan, Camp Arif Jan. And so now I get to learn my platoon. And it was, that was a pretty rough deployment. A lot of internal stuff with that platoon, plus with the chain of command. It was that was something else. And then to couple that with, stuff, once we crossed the berm going into Iraq. But anyway, made it through all right, got home. And so that was the one time. The second time, so setting up going into this, I changed units. I know these guys are deploying. And so going through the process, kind of shaking and getting things set up. I got to back up initially here. For my whole career, I was super, super fortunate and super blessed with the vast majority of the officers that I served with, alongside of, and just in general. I mean, there's only a couple of them that I'm not going to talk about, that were horrendous. But so anyway, and this guy was solid. And so we went through the process, and we were probably kind of trying to stack the deck, and it wound up a lot of cases that way. Just had a solid platoon heading over to Afghanistan. And then once we got there, and this was, this was kind of a thing that came back on me, was I had a guy in my platoon, one of my staff sergeants, and he was a dud. And I wound up launching this guy out of my platoon ahead of this deployment, because I was like, there's no way. I was like, I am not taking this guy with me to be in charge of absolutely anything. And so the only thing that happened, or the reason kind of things played out, is I was over a 90-day mark, which requires an evaluation report. Had I cut him out sooner than that, or if I had been able to cut him out sooner than that, I wouldn't have had to write any paperwork on this guy. So as it turns out, I had to do an NCOER on this guy, and he accused me of racism, all this other weird stuff, and he was just a dud. And so And so kind of long and the short, I was actually proved later that this guy, I think they wound up chappering. He might not have got chaptered, but he definitely got an Article 15 wanting to
Wow.
fight with another staff sergeant. This is downrange. But I wrote an NCR that reflected it. And so there was a bunch of back and forth. And with we had a sergeant major that assumed his responsibilities after we were already in Afghanistan. And this guy, I had launched him up to I think he was in our S3 shop. At battalion. So he gets to talk to the sergeant major first and like, oh, Sergeant Davis racist, blah, 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 which, it's like, all right, whatever, dude. So anyway, we went through that process, but, I because of this, and it worked out for me. So I'm not even complaining about it, but I got moved from that platoon that I had been training with, and we were just rocking it over to another platoon and they changed myself and the platoon leader. So platoon leader, platoon sergeant at the same time,
Right.
which again is that's not typically a bad recipe, but that platoon leader, they wanted him out. And then the platoon sergeant, he was a decent guy. It's just, he was not a transporter. I mean, he's even like, hey man, he was a tanker. And he's like, man, dude, this logistics stuff hurts my head. I'm like, all right, dude, let's go. So anyway, that was, I think, about 3 months into that deployment. I went over to 361 Cav, to Dakota Troop, and then finished the deployment with those guys. And that was, solid. Solid group of guys there already. So that was that, I was fortunate in that aspect because, that previous platoon was just, it was a train wreck. And, I had to fix a lot of things. And this one, there was, a few personnel things, but nothing like I had dealt with before. It was pretty much solid through and through to
Nice.
include the platoon leader I got. So I was like, all right, let's go. So we get that done. These guys, some stuff, other, fun facts, I guess, in their story, standing on the tarmac, freezing. Actually, we were lining up going in, and we're standing out there. I think we put like the cold weather gear because it's snowing on us. And, we're standing around with our hands in our pockets, which is a big no-no. But it's only us out there, everybody in uniform, and it's ridiculously cold. And so out comes, whoever the sergeant major is, get your hands out of your pockets. And then he goes back inside to the warm. It's like, oh my gosh, dude, get that stuff off your heads. And oh my gosh, man, that, and same thing. You're standing out on the tarmac, trying to get on the airplane, just absolutely freezing. And it was good stuff. And then they got us out of there. It was right at the end of November. They flew us out on, I think it was like November, I think it's 30th. So we had Thanksgiving dinner back at Bagram. And then they flew us out like on November 30th. Like, dang, you couldn't hold us one more day. And we'd have got another month of tax exempt, another month of hazardous days. Like, you guys, man. So anyway, we get back. And then, when we got back, I was I wound up putting in my retirement paperwork again. These guys, I put it in, I processed it, and I put it in when I did, because I didn't want to, they were spinning up to deploy again. And I was like, nah, I'm good. So I dropped it a little earlier, I think, than I maybe needed to. And I only I retired as a sergeant first class. So I was at the retention control point. So, I wasn't getting promoted to stay anywhere past 26 years. So I was like, all right. So I punched out, just shy of 25. So I was like, all right.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So you put in your papers to retire,
mm-hmm.
And what did they provide for you to when you're looking to transition back into civilian life?
Yeah, so Fort Carson had a pretty good program. It was Transition Academy is what they called it. And so my last year as a sergeant first class, I told those guys, I was like, I'll kind of play your game. And initially, the first sergeant I had, he was awesome. I deployed. He was in that 361 Cav troop, Dakota troop. And I was like, look, man, I'll let you know I'm alive. I'll come into the formation, whatever. He's like, nah, dude, just, text it in, So I get up in the morning, be like, burp, 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 sling him a text, be like, I'm good, man. Doing things. And so for the last, and then we changed over, had, another guy came in and he kind of thought I was going to work, but I was like, nah, dude, I'm not. I was like, I'll stay in contact, I'll do the things, but to the question, Transition Academy. So I was in a little different situation, and so that's what I'm saying is I actually went to Transition Academy 2 times, and still missed a bunch of stuff.
Wow.
Some things I probably
Is that TAPS by chance?
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the TAPS. I think is what they're still. They've changed names a couple different times over the years, I think. But I was like, all right. So I go through that twice. It was and go through the process of, hey, here's the medical stuff, and again, I was a little different because as a retiree, it's a little more in depth, I think, for things I had to do. I can't say for sure because I didn't get out until I was a retiree.
Right. Exactly.
But I do hear that a lot, and that was part of that reason of not deploying, and part of the problem that we have is the leadership within the organizations. And I don't know, I would have to imagine the other branches have this too, but you get these leaders that are just ridiculous. So that platoon, they deployed and they took guys they didn't even need. And they took guys that were short. They were probably less than a year, I think. And so they're like, whatever, you got up to, I think they give you like 6 months after you actually ETS to go through the Transition Academy. And then even when they got them down range, it was kind of a drawdown during that time. That
Right.
was probably like 13, because it was April of 14 that I retired. So through 13, they deployed. Got them over there and then wouldn't send them home. I'm like, no wonder you guys have retention problems.
Right.
This is how you treat dudes. So I hate to hear these guys that go through that and get right up to the their ETS date. And they're like, okay, go catch a plane. And then you can. I mean, because these guys ETS are typically your younger guys that that have families or early on in careers and life, so they got time to be messing around with this stuff in a lot of cases, especially when it comes to when you start filing for compensation. And this is something that burns me up is the process itself, and especially with a lot of these elected representatives that there's one in particular is the Major Richard Starr Act, and what it's trying to do is separate military retirement from your compensation. And the senator that killed it, I think he was out of Louisiana or Alabama, but he's talking about, no, that's double dipping. It's like, these are 2 different things, dude. I stayed in long enough to earn a retirement for longevity. Plus, you broke me up enough that my quality of life that I'm going to deal with issues for the rest of my life. This has got nothing to do with it's disability compensation. It's because you broke me up that you're going to compensate me monetarily. It doesn't mean I can't function. It doesn't mean I can't work. And these guys get it all twisted up, and we keep reelecting these individuals. But that's one of the things. And so these, and then they talk about the fraud within the VA, and guys, and to be fair, there are guys getting over on the system, the fraudulent stuff. But you know what? The other side we don't hear about is, and this is for one of these guys I served with in Afghanistan, and not just him, but a lot of other guys will not file the claims, because one, they think they don't deserve it,
Right.
or 2, it is such a pain in the butt to do. And this, to me personally, you'll get a letter like, hey, guess what? Next week you have an appointment at this time. And the irritating part is in this letter, they'll tell you, hey, we've been trying to contact you. No, you haven't. I mean, I had that same phone number for like 10 years, and these guys are telling me they've been trying to contact me. Fortunately for me, and what I did after I got out, I went into law enforcement for a little bit, and then but things lined up, so I was able to make some of those appointments. Because then what they'll do is, if you miss, you miss it, you go through that same process. You miss, too many, then you gotta like start a process over again, and it's just
Right.
So what we don't talk about with this process is guys that don't go through it and don't get compensation for how our government treated us, broke us up. And you told me a little bit about your family story, but these guys that took the jab, and now have all kinds of problems. That's issues they're going to have to deal with for the rest of their lives. And these guys get it twisted up, especially the ones that, like, if you haven't served, it irritates me to no end. So I was fortunate. I was able to go through that, but even having gone through that academy twice, stuff I missed, if I would have gone back, I think I would have, some stuff I didn't claim that I should have, that I'm fighting now, that, I don't care to talk about it. It's fine. Varicose veins. As a guy, you're like, whatever, varicose veins. It's, not understanding like what the underlying cause of that is.
Right.
And I found out after I got out, I was down at one of the parks. This when I lived in, we were in Prescott Valley. And some dude wheeling around in a wheelchair with an 82nd Airborne hat on. And I'm like, hey, what's up, Airborne? Talking with him and like, all right, what happened to your leg, dude? And it's because of varicose veins, because of jumping out of airplanes. Well, 20 years in almost 25 years in the Army as a truck driver, sitting down, a lot of that in, body armor, jumping out of air. I've got 65 jumps on my parachutist log.
Wow.
So all those impacts, and I get to the evaluator and they denied a claim for varicose veins. I've already, I had the vein closure done. I'm already looking at it again. Nothing some of these other guys go through, but just, as an example and as a personal example I can talk about. I'm like, they said, nope, I worked in law enforcement for about 1.5 years. And they said, nope, that's what caused it. Like, you were a cop for 1.5 years. So that's where these veins come from. So, if I had that to do over again, I'd be like, hey, count this. So anyway.
Yeah, they don't, a lot of veterans don't think about that at that moment, right? They're like, it'll be fine. It's not that bad and I'll deal with it later. But then it's harder to deal with. So when you were transitioning, did you already have a job in place, or did you get home, sit there, try and, take some time to yourself? How did that progress for you?
A little bit of all of that. So I knew getting out that, my retirement was not enough to just coast on. And I mean, I was, 42, I think, when I retired. So, like I said, came in at 17. So,
Right.
So no, just kind of went through the process. I was like, all right, what do I want to do now that I have to be a grown up? So kind of,
and you don't have anybody telling you what to do.
Yeah, right. So just kind of went through, law enforcement. I had a couple of friends that I went to high school with. I had worked that Bosnia assignment. He was a CID guy. So, a little bit of, kind of prompting there for some stuff. So I just kind of had interest in law enforcement. So I was like, all right, let me see about going to be a cop. So I did. I started looking into the process, and that was an interesting time also. Just in that, so I go through the process of figuring out. I knew I wanted to go home, and fortunately, my wife said, "Yeah, we'll go with you to Arizona." So I actually, while I was still on active duty, I went out and I tested for that police department, and out of 3 slots that they had, I was one of them. So I wound up getting to that, going to the police academy, and that whole test was interesting too. Or like I said, that process. And so I started looking at, like, all right, what do I have to do in order to, qualify for this and do the thing? So again, it's you have a physical test to begin with, and that was I think push-ups, sit-ups, and I think it was a 1.5 mile run. And so I think there were, I said, competing for those slots, I think there was like 25 or 30 people.
Oh, wow.
Maybe even more. And it was like, it just got out of each. So we started out with, push-ups. We dropped off, I think it was, 2 people or whatever there. We go to sit-ups, 2 more people drop off. We get to the run. One guy didn't even finish. He left.
He's out.
Yeah. And it's not, you don't just, to me, what amazed me is these guys, it's not like you just wake up in the morning and be like, police department's testing. I'm gonna go check it out. You have to apply, and they'll be like, yeah, come test with us. And this guy, he shows up. He's like, I've been a truck driver for, he's a little older guy, probably, mid-30s, I guess. I've been driving truck for however long. I smoke 2 packs a day. And like, what are you doing here, dude? So anyway, I kind of researched some of this stuff. I put in the, got myself into a reasonable enough shape that I could do that. Started studying the tests because, I hadn't done any type of math. And believe it or not, there's math involved in law enforcement. Started studying that, doing practice tests, and even researched polygraph, because that was part of, for this agency was polygraph. So I started looking at that, and then you have to answer that question. Hey, did you, like, well, yeah, like, why would I not? And the interesting about that is like, it's 50-50. It's a flip of the coin whether they're going to pass you or not, regardless of whether you're lying or not.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, dude, I'm kind of sweating that mess. I'm like, I'm in here, telling all kinds of crazy stuff I've done, and like, man, did I miss any of it? Like, that's, we're talking, I'm filling out, back to, because you have to answer questions like, have you ever?
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, man. And some of them, you got to answer. You're like, well, as a, 42-year-old man answering yes to some of these questions, you're like, I was a teenager, dude.
Times were different back then.
Yeah. But you have to answer yes to these. And it's like, oh my gosh. So anyway, but like I said, I answered all the questions, got through the polygraph. And then, I went to the police academy, and, so I had actually elected by my peers there to be the class president. So that was interesting. And that was where, again, I will take a taser any day of the week over OC. And it's interesting now, because now I got 2 genres of movies that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is nonsense. Like when you see you see either the drive stun or, actually get tased, and like these guys are knocked out for, 5 minutes. Like, no, that's not how that works. You're done. You're back up. You can, there's a little bit of but the whole premise is you get locked up, you hit the ground, and it's supposed to, and some agencies are different, but typically, you get 2 officers to deploy a taser, because then the other one is following to get this guy cuffed.
Right.
But oh my gosh, OC was horrible, absolutely horrible. Because it's, because not only do you get juiced right in the face, and it shuts down, then you're not legitimately fighting, but you're kind of fighting, and you have to identify a weapon, you have to, give commands, and then it takes forever to clear up. Even, we got through the process, and, like, rinsing your eyes out. And then we go back into a classroom. And for me, like, we're in the classroom, and and then just like, wham, my eyes shut back down again. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was horrible. So, like, then you got to pound through the pain to keep your eyes open. So did that. And then, about a year and a half. And for me, it was, I left the Army with some more physical issues than I really wanted to admit to. And so I got to a point, and even going through the academy, I told myself that I was not going to be the guy that couldn't get over the fence. I was like, I am not going to live with that. So I got to a point, and I was like, all right, I'm probably pushing that. So I punched out. And then we moved to Tennessee. And
here you are.
Yeah, that was 2017. We moved to Warren County, and it's been really kind of kicking around since then.
So now that you're here in Tennessee, what resources are you aware of in Tennessee?
So I'm going to assume, since it's a conversation with a vet, that we're talking about veterans.
Correct.
Yes.
Veteran resources.
So for veterans, and I would say anybody watching this, and I always talk to, if you're a veteran, whether you actually participate or not, join one of these service organizations. I chose primarily to throw in with the VFW, just because it's a little more shared experience. I'm also a member of the American Legion. Both are great organizations. We also have a Marine Corps League here, which If I think their only requirement is that you have a favorite flavor of crayon, and ah, no, but
Too bad my sons aren't watching this tonight.
Yeah.
Because they would
No,
tell you what their favorite is.
Yeah, but no, the Marine Corps League, that's a very, very positive organization. So if you're a Marine, I would encourage you to do that. But put your name in there, and ideally you can participate, at least go to meetings, and then as much as you can. And I say minimally to be a part of it and put your name on the roster, because at the end of the day, these organizations are lobbyists. The Veterans of Foreign Wars, American Legion. I don't know if the Marine Corps League does a lot of lobbying in either here in Tennessee or in DC, but definitely the VFW and the American Legion. That's a struggle within the organization. These guys, we don't do politics. No, dude, we are lobbyists. We do some other things too, and I say that so that as these organizations, they have numbers behind them, because that's what these politicians, these elected representatives, that's what they understand. It's like, hey, we represent, however many, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. If you're going into these offices representing an organization that has, 3 million members, they're going to pay attention.
Yeah, for sure.
And I say, and then participate also at your local level, because we're not done. Unfortunately, there are guys out there that struggle, but the vast majority of guys come back and are successful. Coming back into the civilian life, and we should highlight some of these guys that are struggling. Especially ones that were broke up. What I typically say Army, but whatever branch, that due to your service, especially any of the, like myself, having been in that long, burn pit exposure,
Right.
just I fortunately I was out before they started doing the COVID vaccine, so I didn't have to make that decision. I did get juiced up with the anthrax nonsense, and that was another bunch of trash. Also, all the way back to Desert Shield, Desert Storm, they handed us non-FDA approved nerve agent pills to take. Those almost killed me. To make it short, I woke up after coming off the road. They came in like, hey, take 2 of those pills. You're only supposed to take 1. So that was partially a leadership failure.
Yep.
And so being a tired and a reasonably good private, I guess I'd pop 2 of these things out and then, wake up, however much longer, not breathing. And, had to sit up for like at the end of my cot for like 45 minutes, like conscious effort to breathe. So, and we should advocate for the guys that have these problems, struggle, especially with the, PTSD stuff, all of that. But you get these lawmakers that, hey, it's double dipping. Get out of here, you clown. So anyway, back to the resources, we have those. Each county in Tennessee has a veteran service officer or office, whether it's filled or not, happens. Some places we're fortunate here in Warren County that in McMinnville, we have the CBOC, I guess they're called, or whatever, our VA office where you can get your care there. Murfreesboro has been pretty reasonable. For the most part, my care has been fine there. Well, they're veteran specific. There, just a lot of the organizations here, the businesses, military discounts, stuff like that. But resources specifically, I feel like I'm missing something. But they're out there. A lot of it you got to advocate for yourself, especially when you start dealing with the VA and the medical system, because they'll and we kind of have this mindset like, well, the doc says, like, nah, you have to advocate for yourself for the treatment you want. And I'm not a big advocate, I guess, but I know some of these alternative things are very helpful to a lot of guys. Marijuana, CBD, that sort of thing, and arguably those type of things to help guys are probably are more likely better than hitting the bars and the bottle and doing that mess. So as part of a treatment, or even part of your own self medication, as it's called. But
Right.
um, yeah, and unfortunately, that's some legislation here in Tennessee was passed at the national level that for the CBD, unless it gets changed, that's going to go away federally. Those hemp farmers, and again, and hemp and marijuana are two completely different things, similar but different. And so for those guys to for these elected representatives to take that away, it's like, you guys, man.
Yeah.
So,
So let
anyway,
me go out
tangent
to
there.
the chats real quick. For anybody who's been watching, has any questions for Tom, why don't you go ahead and get those put into the chats now for me? I wanted to ask you, Tom, when, um, let's say you have a child come to you, teenager, and they say they want to go into the military. What kind of words of wisdom would you have for them? We'll just keep it short,
Oh, sure.
60
Um,
seconds.
yeah, all right. Oh, no, I'd say it's definitely worth looking into. I'd lean towards the Army. It's the oldest and the largest branch. We have, and from, this is my information's a little old, but guaranteed jobs. You pick your job before you even leave for training. Some of the other branches weren't doing it. I don't know if they've caught on to that, but yeah, it's but at the same time, make sure you take care of yourself. Track all your medical stuff. Have a positive attitude. You'll hear a lot of these guys like, "Hey, don't stand out." And no, absolutely not. Be the leader. Starting with basic training. Take charge of stuff as best you can, because you'll find that you'll get to do more of the cool stuff. If you're a go-to person versus just the average, or definitely steer away from being a dirtbag. Stay away from people with poor attitudes. Watch out for your career. Make sure early on you're learning what you need to do to get promoted, career progression, and make the connections with those that you're serving with, to your left and right. But yeah, I think it's a solid thing to do. Stand your ground. Have an exit strategy regardless of when that is. And yeah,
Excellent.
So give it a go.
So Jason, that's my husband, said it was great meeting you last weekend.
Yeah, meet you as well, Jason.
And just something to throw out there too before we wrap things up for the evening. And this might be good information for you as well, because as you said, you are now starting the process of trying to get claims approved for things that you didn't initially put because you thought, it's not a big deal. Simmons Law Firm, Simmons, Simmonds law firm. It is a veteran-owned, veteran-run law firm, and they are an advocacy service and veterans disability benefits go-getter. And it is a for-profit. However, every single claim that goes through to them, like that, they say, hey, I've tried everything, I'm not getting anywhere. And you send over your information to them to review. I mean, it is a free initial consult. Now he'll tell you, hey, and go check this, go do this. You need to do this step or whatever, right? Before it even gets to that point of him advocating for you directly with the VA. But, he's going to point you in those directions. And it's one of those things like, it's almost expected that anytime you put a claim in initially, it's going to be denied. It's like, how serious are you of this claim, right? I mean, So just so you know that that's out there. So if anybody watching is interested in that, they're having trouble with their claims going through the VA, you can look up Simmons Law. And again, that is SIMMONDS law, and the website is currently down. I knew that they were trying to redo stuff with it, so don't stress out. They're currently working on it, but it's SimmonsLawVets.com. So SimmonsLawVets.com. Now, for all transparency, I am not advocating. I am not being, sponsored by them. I do know, though, I have a couple of veterans that have utilized him, and they are extremely happy with the outcome and what he has done for them, as well as even continuing to stay in contact with them over the years. So something to keep in mind while you go through that process. And at a minimum, you can always give them a buzz and, kind of see what their process is and how they go about it. But every one of them that was there, it's my understanding, that works for them, works for him, were VA raiders at some point. So they worked for the VA, they, as well as learned how to do the ratings for the VA. So they're very aware of the ins and outs.
Right.
So I want to thank you very much, Tom, for your time, and it's been a pleasure having you on. Now, I do have one more question for you. I know we kind of briefly talked this over. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark here, pretty close, and so I'm gonna give you 5 minutes if we can talk a little bit about what are you doing today, and how is it, how's things progressing for you? Like, without going into a lot of the politics of it all.
I got you. Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
All right. And I'll start it off with back to, talking about, so veterans, as in any of us, we need to stay engaged after you get out in politics, vetting the candidates. We are a huge voting block, and we need to stay engaged voting. And so I say that, and like, so myself, I am running for the U.S. House of Representatives, and I am running in the Republican primary. And I would encourage veterans, and what I say when I go around talking about this is, who better to represent us than us? And that the answer is us. So be on the lookout and stay at all levels. It's your local level, state and national level, and at least look for veterans, and vet them. If they line up enough, then vote for them. If they don't, then obviously, you make your own decision as an adult and as a citizen. But we within this nation, that's part of the problem is since it's the 60s, voter turnout has been under 60%. And I don't even think we're cracking 50%. So we have got to be engaged, and not to the point that you're obsessing over it, but at least understand some voting records, and how that has affected the military. So like I said, and for me, so that's how it's progressing is I got to a point where I gave a speech at the Memorial Day ceremony in 23 that we do here in Warren County. My VFW post was in charge of it. They asked me, I was honored to give the speech. And I gave a bit of an atypical speech. I presented my own speech versus the canned one that you can pick up from the VFW. And I laid out some problems that we're struggling with then. I think some of them we're struggling with, and in some ways ahead. And at the end of that speech, after I got done, and at the end of the ceremony, I was asked, I believe it was by my state representative, if I had ever considered running for politics. And at that point, I said no. Other than growing up, hey, I'm going to be president. But kind of through that year, a lot of things stacked up on me, and I got to a point, looking around, and said, yeah, I should probably still serve. And so, prayed on it, and was led like, okay, dude, go ahead and do the thing. And so I did it then. Was unsuccessful that time in the primary. Calling was still there, so I've been doing it still, and I'm looking at. I've pulled my paperwork, have my signatures, so now I'll be turning that petition in to be on the ballot in August. So, and again, as veterans, stay engaged, involved. If you're called, back into it, then absolutely. we are underrepresented in the especially the U.S. House. I think it was out of 435 members in the U.S. House. The last Congress, I haven't checked this time, I probably should, but there were only like 80 or 81 veterans. So that's it should be more. Same thing in the I don't know. I think it was 17 that were in the Senate, and again, should be more. So look into that.
Excellent. We got about 30 seconds. How, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, would they do that?
Oh, sure. TomDavisTN4@gmail.com. Also on Facebook, primarily Tom Davis for Congress. X is Tom Davis TN4. YouTube, I have some videos up, Tom Davis TN4. And yeah, primarily Facebook, Tom Davis for Congress.
Perfect. And let's see, TomDavis4.com, did you say?
The website, the website is TomDavisTN4.com.
Okay, so we're going to throw that out there. I'm going to put this also in the chats. Let's see, TomDavisTN4
Yes. Yep. And the number 4, TN.
Yep. All right. So those are going out to the chats, guys. So go ahead and get a quick snap of that. And Tom, thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you want to hang tight for me, I'm going to go ahead and get this wrapped up for the week.
Yep. So, Carolee, I appreciate what you're doing here, and yeah, we'll keep spreading the word within the VFW.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So for the rest, more interesting guys.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful. For the rest of you, thank you all for being here. Even for those who I know were watching, but we're not necessarily in the chat. So I do have another great guest lined up for next Sunday night, 6 p.m. Central Time. So please be sure at the end of this, when you guys log off, make sure to hit that like button. Throw a comment in there for us and hit that notification bell so that you make sure that you get notified for each and every show so you don't miss out and you can hear the great conversations with our veterans. So again, everybody have a wonderful night, a wonderful weekend, and y'all stay warm. We'll see you again next week.